have you on the show, man. I've been a fan for a long time, so it's great to finally be able to have a chance to talk with you.
Oh man, appreciate it. My pleasure.
Hey, first off, I want to say congratulations on a new album. I think it's man, it's just as good as the first two.
Oh,
And,
thanks.
I mean,
Thanks.
really excellent material. You
Thanks.
have two singles out so far.
Yeah.
19 Summertime and Hey Life, and I think what I like best about what you guys do is, these songs are excellent representations of what this album is, and they're always upbeat. It's always a good time, feel good. I know when I throw anything on that you do, that it's going to put a smile on my face, and I love that you do that.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, that's really the goal of it all. I mean, it's not only to satisfy ourselves as creators, artists, whatever, songwriters, producers, whatever you want to call us. But I mean, first and foremost is to kind of please ourselves, but we also know who we're making these records for. And to me, especially, I feel like if you're going to bother writing a song, I mean, at least let it be memorable in some way, whether it be great musicianship or a hook or a feeling. So I feel if you don't have one of those things, one of those three, then there's no point in even continuing the song. So our goal is always to just write, really kind of upbeat, not, I mean, again, we don't want to write songs for, to depress people. We're not those kind of musicians. So we're kind of in it just to make everybody feel good and have a good time while they're listening.
Hey, well, you guys do it well too.
Thanks.
You really do. The album drops on June 9th, and it's obviously your third album and a follow-up to Zakusha, which I thought was a great album as well.
Thanks.
This new album has obviously the signature sound, that we all know and love, but this one, like I said earlier, it seems like it's a little more upbeat and more into the the real good melodic sound that you're noted for. And what was it like going in to record this album? Because I know they say the third album, sometimes, and this one's a charm in my opinion.
Thanks.
What was it like going into the studio and recording this one?
I'd say the only difference between this one and the first two was that, because of, the COVID and everyone being locked up, that's when we started kind of, throwing the idea around of doing another record. And we felt it was a perfect time because we really, couldn't do anything else really at the time, so stuck inside. So,
Right.
I would say, what was the difference between this one and the first two? I mean, I couldn't really put my finger on it because most of the time when Paul and I write, I basically just throw ideas at him, and the ones that he gravitates towards are the ones that we work on. And so there are many others that I might feel strongly about that he doesn't gravitate towards, and that's the when you're working with other musicians, that's what you have to do. You have to kind of, fight, pick your battles, and excuse me 1 second. Let me just turn that off. Yeah.
Sure.
You have to kind of pick your battles as far as how strongly you feel about a certain idea and whether you want to really impose your will on the person that you're writing with, or person in this case. But as far as going into the studio with this one, I don't know if it was that much different than the others. The only thing that was different was that, we were dealing with a ton of anxiety and stress and depression, actually, because of the whole COVID thing and not knowing
Right.
the future and where everything was, where we were going to be. So it was a really unique time, a unique circumstance as far as that's concerned. So, but as far as going into the studio, we usually tackle it the same way. We make pretty much, album quality demos with the exception of no drums in there. It's probably, to a drum machine. And then we replace the drum machine in the end with a drummer. So that's kind of the way, we're not, we don't make records the old school way where we're all in the same room and we're kind of hashing out ideas, and, that's cool and everything. But we also appreciate the technology part of it and being able to do, again, I would like to be in the same room as those guys. It'd probably be easier, but this is also fine because you can record at your own leisure. So, and I would say, to answer your question, it was really not that much different, other than we just had a lot more time.
Yeah, the process now is so much different than it used to be. I mean, going into the studio and having all that time together with a producer, and you feel like nowadays it's more like a relaxing for you as an artist. When you listen to tracks like Go Big or Go Home, or Against the Grain, and my favorite, it's just so good.
Cool.
It's kind of like it seemed like it was, you mentioned a relief kind of coming off of COVID for you guys.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely, I would say that the ideas for these songs maybe took a little bit longer because of all the stuff I was talking about before, everyone's being, anxious and depressed and all of that stuff because of what was going on in the world. But when the ideas did come, I'm usually pretty good at this. I've been doing this for a long time, so I'm pretty good at recognizing something that is the good bones of a, foundation of an idea or a song. So the ones that there were probably a ton of them that I didn't even bother sending to Paul because I didn't think that they were going to, fit what we were trying to do. There was actually, a bunch of them. Like, I wrote a bunch of depressing songs, and when I listened back to them, I was like, wow, these are good, but this is not what I want to be doing. I don't want to get my violin out and sing a sad song. I want to try and uplift people. So, as far as the way it's recording and producers and all of that, I mean, we're our own producers. Would I love to have a producer, help us with recording? Absolutely. The only problem is that there's, all the producers that I grew up admiring and idolize, they're either not within reach, or they're, maybe older than me. And so,
Right.
So it's a little bit tough with that. So we really have to rely on our own sense of song and production to get these records done these days. Yeah.
That's really great to hear that. And that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, is the recording process overall. And, working with Paul and Rob, that's what I wanted to ask you about. I mean, you three together, I consider you a melodic rock machine.
Oh, thanks so much.
That's the best way to put it.
That's awesome. Thanks, bro. I mean, look, I've known Rob for forever. He's like my younger brother, and the two of us we have a very unique sense of just being able to work well together, and a sense of humor actually is really on the same page. So we just kind of laugh our way through these songs and through these records because we just have known each other for so long. As far as Paul and I, we have a different kind of relationship where Paul is, he's a lead singer, and you've heard the stories about lead singers and lead singer disease and all of that, and lead singer syndrome. And while Paul might have it in a small amount, it's not nearly the way it is when you deal with other singers, when you deal with other guys that have huge egos. Like Paul, when Paul works with me, we really just kind of insult each other, and no one really takes offense to it. Like, if he, there are occasions when I'll have an idea that I feel really strong about, and I'll just say, hey, did you work on that idea? And he'll say, nah, I didn't really think it was good, or it kind of sucked. And I'll be like, oh man, I really like that one, And, and then there's the other side of it where, I'll send Paul an idea that I feel very strongly about, and what he comes back at me with, what he wants to do with it is not really my vision. And so then I have to kind of decide, okay, do I want to continue with this kind of altered version that Paul is introducing, or do I want to just throw the song out? And I would say that 60 to 70% I'll go with Paul's idea, but there are times when I also go, you know what, I just, it's not where I want to go with the song. So we just know each other so well from working with each other for so many years, whether it be in Danger or even in the Defiants. So we're comfortable with each other. So it's kind of a no-brainer to do these records, really.
That's great to hear, about that process. And that's what I wanted to ask you, when you go into write a song, I know a lot of artists and everybody does it differently, but is it an idea? Is it a riff? Is it a chorus? Because you guys, you always have that, it's very hook driven and everything flows very seamlessly for you.
Thanks. I mean, yeah, I'm all about the hook, so, I mean, a lot of the times I'll just be sitting, riffing away on my guitar, and I'll come up with a really cool groove or a cool riff that I really like, and then I try and formulate that into a rough sketch of the song, meaning I don't really bother with the introduction so much, but I usually go verse, chorus, or verse, B section, chorus, and then I just, if that's good, then I'll continue with it. And so a lot of the times I'll just be doing my daily chores, whatever it be, whether, I could be at the supermarket or something, and something will just strike me, like a phrase or I'll hear somebody say something, kind of, in another conversation down the aisle or something. And I'll go, wow, that's cool. Or that's a really cool title for a song, or that's a really cool subject for a song. So I'm always, walking around with my phone. I have lists of ideas, song titles, band names, all of that stuff. I'm always doing that. So when I come across something like, for instance, Go Big or Go Home, I just thought, I go, wow, that's a cool title. And I go, you know what? I don't recall any other song ever being called that, which is very rare.
Right, that's true.
Most of the times when you come up with a song idea, there's a million other people that wrote the same song or have the same song title. So when I heard that, I was like, all right, this is cool. I go, all right, that's something. And then I'll just start singing Go Big or Go Home in my head, like a melody to it. And then I'll pick up guitar, and then the song goes from there. With other ideas, again, I will not be able to come. I'm not a great lyricist. I'm like, I'm an aspiring lyricist.
Right.
But I'm usually responsible for, a lot of themes and a lot of chorus kind of lyrics. Like I'll come up with the lyrics for a chorus, and then I'll go like, all right, I'm done with this. Like, I don't want to do the dirty work. I'll let Paul do that. So I'm a little bit lazy when it comes to that, because I'm very critical. I'm very critical when it comes to all of this stuff, especially on myself. So if I know that the minute I put out a lyric that I wrote, I'm going to have all my critics that are my friends are going to, call me up and go, dude, what the hell was with that lyric? It's kind of stupid, So I'm always on edge. Like I'm always like feeling like I have to not impress, or at least get by the jury. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I'm always aware of that. And, sometimes I succeed, sometimes I do fail, but I'm always trying. So other times I'll come up with just a great melodic song. I'll be singing a melody, but I have no lyric in mind. And I really, I'm like stumped. And then I said, well, maybe Paul can help me. And I'll send him the idea. And a lot of times he'll come up with something brilliant. And I'll be like, dude, you saved the song. Like, that's so cool, And so, it's different with every song, but that's usually the way it happens. It's usually the way it happens. I think Paul used to kind of, write some sketches and send them to me, but that didn't really work out so much, because a lot of the times when Paul writes, he has an idea of how he wants the song to go, and there's really no room for me to be creative in that idea. So there were a lot of times where he would throw ideas at me, and I would be like, okay, well, what do you want me to do with this? Meaning like I don't have to co-write every song, but that's part of the fun, So we both agreed that that the two of us would be equal contributors, is, you know, for the most part, to the songs we write for the Defiants. So we came to the conclusion through trial and error that it's better that I come up with the bones and send it to him, and then he, you know, and then we go from there. So that's usually the way it comes together.
That's good that you guys have that type of relationship too, you know, where you can, you know, feed off of each other. One guy has one style and one does things a little bit differently, and it comes off. I mean, I guess it's one of those things where you kind of say it's a match made in heaven, especially in a music business, when you have a relationship like that.
Yeah, I mean, look, no relationship is perfect. As you know, there are times when, you know, I'm sure Paul wants to kick me, you know, punch me in the face, and vice versa. It happens, and the thing is as you get older in this business, and as you've been doing it for so long, you realize that the relationships you make and the relationships you have with other musicians and other artists, it's very rare that you get along with someone that you're able to check your ego at the door and kind of rely on someone else. Like, I mean, I've tried to do it even in the past 10 or 15 years with new people, and it just never works. So I don't know if that's a human thing or if it's just, you know, from knowing someone for so long, but yeah, it's very rare, and I realize that, so I don't take it for granted.
Right. That's really cool to hear. And
Yeah.
I know, you know, obviously, you know, wanted to bring up the, you know, the early days and forming Danger, which was what started it for me. Because, you know, the first time I heard, you know, the debut album, obviously, you know, Naughty Naughty blew up, and was a smash. And my song off that one is Under the Gun. But what was the experience like for you, you know, from your point of view, you know, when you formed the band and eventually when you guys, you know, broke right at that time? What was it like for you?
It was exciting and very tough. I mean, we were, it's a battle. You know,
Right.
you're in the swamp with a million other bands trying to do the same thing. And, you know, I was a classically trained musician when I was a kid. My father it was the associate concertmaster for the New York Philharmonic Orchestra, and I was, you know, a cellist when I was a kid. And the ideas that were kind of, you know, driven home to me was that the cream rises to the top. And
Right.
that is not what rock music and trying to get a band together, you know, with rock music is about. It's somewhat based on talent, but there's a lot of luck and a lot of politics involved. And
Oh yeah.
so it was tough because, you know, we were just trying to get a band together, Steve and I, you know, when we decided to go for it, you know, with an original thing. And, you know, everybody was trying to get a deal, and there were some guys that were, you know, in New York. We did it in the New York area, of course. So
Right.
there were some musicians that were better than others, and there wasn't a big pool to pick from. So it wasn't like, oh, well, you know, this guitarist isn't working out, let's just grab that guy. No, there were none. There was maybe a handful of people at each, you know, singer, guitar player, drummer, that kind of thing. There weren't that many that were kind of on the level, you know, on the musicianship level, and, you know, just had their act together where you could kind of get a band together and maybe get a record deal. So I would think that the problem that Steve and I had trying to get a record deal and trying to get the band together is that we're very headstrong, and we feel that we're, I don't want to say we know more than anybody else, because we don't, but we had that feeling. You kind of have to have that ego where you think you're better than everyone else, or else you'll never get there, even if it's not true. You understand what I'm saying? So,
Gotcha.
so we just, through trial and error, just kept knocking on the door. And we always felt that, you know, we looked at the whole landscape of kind of what was going on with rock music, and we kind of, we formulated a plan. It was really a plan, because it wasn't like an organic thing. We kind of sat and looked at everything and said, okay, well, what kind of band do we want to be? And we said, well, we want to be a band that looks great, plays great, and has great songs. We figure if we have those three things, because again, in the 80s, a lot of it was based on image.
Right.
So, that's just the way it was. So, and that was honestly, looking back on it, part of the reason why I wanted to be a musician was that when I was in high school and growing up listening to all the bands that I did, the thing that attracted me to the whole thing was that they were cool, that they were cooler than the average person, that they were rock stars, and that everybody loved them and adored them. And so I wanted to try that. When I saw Steven Tyler, I was like, this isn't like the guy you're going to find at the local supermarket.
Right. That's right.
I mean, this is like the coolest man that ever walked on the face of the earth. So that's what I want to try to be. So we kind of said, okay, well, we wanted to have a keyboard player because, so we were like, okay, we want 5 guys that look great, that can play, and we want to write catchy songs, but we also don't want to be, which was kind of our downfall. We didn't want to be a metal band. We kind of wanted to take, the music that we were listening to at the time, which was Loverboy, Rick Springfield, Survivor. Like, it's more like adult-oriented rock. It wasn't really like, the whole like, we were listening to Rat and Motley Crue and Van Halen. No, I mean, we love those bands, but we were more, thinking about it along the lines of, well, we want hit songs. We don't want to just make it on, a great guitar player. We want to have that hit song that's on CHR, Contemporary Hit Radio. So we were thinking about that at the same time as we were saying, okay, but we still want to get the whole, hairband thing audience. So we were trying to put the two together. I don't know if if we succeeded or not, because we kind of got screwed after we got a record deal. Nobody knew where to fit us in because we weren't like as heavy as all the other bands that were coming out. We had keyboards and more melody, and we were a little bit lighter, but our image was still, with those other bands. So the label didn't know what to do with us, and there was a lot of errors and mistakes that were made with us. But in the end, everything happened the way it happened. And of course, would I go back and change things? Yes. But, I also feel that, very fortunate to have, gotten as far as we did. So there's 2 ways you could look at it. I could have sour grapes and say, oh, fuck, man, we should have been as big as Bon Jovi, or we should have been as, we should have done this, or we should have done that. And then it's the other side of me that says, hey, man, we were there. We were, we did pretty good. So I tend to look at it that way, like we did pretty good. And I'm kind of grateful for all of that stuff. I am.
You're right about that too, because there was so many that, the bigger bands, there was like a handful. And then you look at all the bands that were like just on the cusp, for what you guys did at that time. I mean, and the style, like you said.
I mean, I honestly think the difference between a band like Bon Jovi and Danger at that time was not so much talent and, John is a better singer than Ted Poley or blah, blah, blah. It has nothing to do with that. I think it has more to do with, a lot of luck, better management, and connections with better people. I mean, look, you give me Desmond Child and Bob Rock and Bruce Fairbairn and Mutt Lange and all of these great producers that Def Leppard and Bon Jovi and all that, you give them to Danger, we would have been there right with those bands. So it's also that we were signed to a subsidiary of Sony Records, which was barely a label, and we weren't given the opportunities that the other bands were for whatever reasons. Our management wasn't as good. We didn't have the connections, or I don't know, somebody didn't like us. I don't know what it was, but I always think that it didn't really have to do with the substance of the band or the talent. I think it had more to do with, luck and connections and timing.
Yeah, and that's like that with a lot of things, especially in the music business, having that luck, which is, it's something that you can't account for. It doesn't matter, how much effort you put in and how much you put toward it. You just need to get that break.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to think that like Sony had to actually take most of their staff And I don't know if anybody knows this story, but MTV didn't want to play our video. Like they just did not. I don't know what they had against us. I don't know if they didn't like our manager or if they didn't like our label. I don't know what it was, but MTV just did not want to play the video for Naughty Naughty or Bang Bang for that matter. And I remember at one time the head of Epic Records took the entire staff of the record company, put everybody in hard hats and construction vests, and they had sawhorses that said "Danger, Danger" on them, and walked down in the middle of the streets of Manhattan, walked down to MTV Studios and had a demonstration outside of the office. I mean, it was a publicity stunt, but it worked.
Right. That's cool.
And I just say to myself, well, why do we have to do that? Like, isn't there someone there that kind of could, I always thought that people that work at, record companies or at MTV kind of knew a little bit about music, but they really don't. So,
right. That's right.
So, again, I go, so they have to, stage a demonstration to get us on MTV. That's kind of ridiculous, but that's what happened.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
And listening to, what you did on the first album and then the follow-up, Screw It, which I thought was another great album.
Thanks.
You also think of, how is this band, this good, with these songs? I mean, obviously the debut, but Monkey Business and Everybody Wants Some and Don't Blame It on Love. It's such a hook driven, like I said, I mean, you sing these songs. I mean, when I just look at the title, I have that playing through my head. And it amazes me that the people, wouldn't see that back then, like you just said.
Hey, it's the burning question, like you can't tell an individual what they like and what they don't like. I mean, you can't teach that. Right. You would think that you wake up in the morning and you say, okay, well, I think this way, and I think that most people will think this way. Well, that's not the case. Everybody likes different stuff. Some people will just take a look at our album or at one of us and go, I don't like those guys, without even listening to a song. Or they'll say, I don't like these songs. They're whatever. They're not for me. And so you would think that, okay, well, if you have all the ingredients that make a great dish or a great song or whatever it is, you would think that you can't lose, but you can. You can. People like different stuff. So,
That's right. And when you were talking about, the early days, like I said, starting the band and obviously the debut album and the follow-up, like I said, Screw It, we were just talking about. When you went in to do that album, did you have the pressure when you went into to say, hey, we need to top what we're doing now? Because like you said, you guys were right on the cusp.
Absolutely. Yeah, we did. You're talking about Screw It now, right?
Right.
Yeah, definitely felt the pressure. We knew that we weren't going to get many opportunities to do this. A lot of times, when you get a record deal, it's one and done. So we were a little bit disappointed because of the mishaps and the mishandling of the promotion of our first record. So we were more determined than ever to write a really great album and to make sure that we had songs that, if we were given the opportunity to get on the radio or to go on a big tour or whatever, get on the radio, get on hit radio, that we would have just as much, if not a better chance at succeeding. And you know what they say you have your whole life to write your first album, which is true, because Steve and I met like years before we formed Danger Danger, and we're writing these songs, pretty much as kids. And then we had 6 months to write Screw It. So there was a lot of like, hurry up, we got to get this record out before they forget about us.
Right.
So, and it was also the label, things were changing there. So we also felt the pressure there. We got to get this record done or the label might forget about us as well. So we kind of holed up in an apartment in Los Angeles, Steve and I, and just kept writing and kept writing, kept writing. And, we think we did good. We wrote some great songs for that album. And also it was self-produced. So there was that. We didn't have the I don't want to say the pressure. I would say we didn't have a producer that we weren't 100% on board with. We tried to get Mutt Lange to produce Screw It. Could you imagine what that would have sounded like?
Oh man,
one
right.
could only dream. But we were trying to get a big producer to do Screw It, and every time we would contact them, they would say, okay, well, maybe I'll be available in 6 to 8 months because I'm doing this record and that record. And so we just didn't want to wait. We were like, we know what we're doing. We've been doing this for a while. Let's just go in and cut the record. And that's how it went down.
That's a great story. And you were talking about the writing of this, and you and Steve going in. I love the lyrics of that album and so many different songs. I think what's cool about what the bands did in the 80s, and it's not so much now, it seems like everything's more straightforward. But you guys were very tongue-in-cheek with the lyrics, and it was a great loose vibe.
Yeah,
these songs. I loved it.
Thanks. I mean, I'm going to give credit where credit is due. That was mainly Steve, because he's he was the chief lyricist in the team of Danger Danger. And sometimes I used to get on him about that because, we would always kind of talk about, what is our angle as far as, what's going to make us stand out. So we looked at bands like, Guns N' Roses or Motley Crue or whatever. And we're like, okay, well, those guys are all, they're bad boys, kind of, all tatted up and kind of all, getting crazy with drugs and all of that. And we weren't those guys. We would drink a little, but we were pretty tame when it came to, doing all the partying. And so we said, what's our angle? And we like, well, we like women. So we kind of went a little bit too far in that direction, I think, if you ask me, looking back on it. But because, it's funny now when you look at it, but, when you see, you read the lyrics for Slip to the Big One, you kind of go like, okay, well, it's not really about what you think it's about, but it's kind of intended that way. So we could have avoided, maybe, if we could have avoided the Slip to the Big Ones and the Horny Son of a Bitches. And, a little, to me, like, those two songs were going a little bit too far. But at that point, I couldn't reel Steve in. So we kind of just went full bore on the, sexual innuendo and all that stuff. So, it worked for us, especially in Europe. But, I also think that it hurt us a little bit in the States with, even with the cover for Screw It and that whole thing. I mean, it's one thing to have a song called Monkey Business, which we know what that was about. But I mean, again, when you pair that up with the album cover and the whole Screw It thing, and it was a little bit overboard for me looking back on that, as far as Screw It is concerned. Not on the first album, more on the second album.
You're right. That was the time, PMRC was blowing up and you were getting all that too. So, I mean, you guys, you kind of had to dance around, that restriction,
Yeah, we were trying to be, tough about it and saying, like, we don't give a shit and this is the way we are, blah, blah, blah. But it certainly didn't help our cause. So I think if we would have maybe just toned it down just a little bit, we could have achieved the same thing, maybe more. Who knows? We'll never know now.
Yeah, stuff. I thought you did great with those two. And coming off of Screw It, and we were just talking about all that. You guys, had Cockroach, which that was kind of like where things started to unravel a little bit. Unfortunately, you guys were. I thought you were right on the cusp. I mean, it was like, boom, here they are, this next one. Tell us about that, how that came about in the situation there.
Well, I mean, it's it's a well told story, but basically it was they ushered us out, with grunge,
Right.
and so things were not good, and so we were kind of wondering what was going to happen, and then we had all the problems with Ted, and so things fell apart with Ted pretty quickly. And I have a feeling that it probably had a lot to do with the fact that grunge was ushered in, and that we were being pushed aside and not given a chance. So things went down with Ted the way they did, and we got we were told by the label that they wanted to continue with us and that they would let us get another singer. And so we got Paul and went in and recut the vocals for Cockroach. And at the time, we kind of felt like it was the best of both worlds. Like it was a little bit of I don't want to say an angrier Danger, because we weren't angry, but it had a little bit more of an edge.
Right.
And it still had the trademark catchy songs on it, but had a little bit more of an edge, a little bit more guitar oriented record. And so we went in and did that. And then, when the record was finished, due to all the lawsuits that were coming our way, courtesy of Ted, Sony decided to shelve us, to put us on the shelf and drop the band. So
Right.
They didn't want to defend more lawsuits. So they figured it'd be easier to get rid of us. So that's what they did. And then, we had that record just sitting there for years until we were able to license it and put it out to the public to let people hear it.
I remember the first time I heard it too. It was because the version I have, you had two discs actually, the one that Ted sang on and one that Paul sang on. And I thought that the transition to Paul was a very good fit, because he kind of had that kind of like the same style as Ted, but he had more edge to his vocals, and I thought it fit well with like you said, the structures of the songs and the way that came out. I thought it was a very good fit.
Yeah, I mean, look, each of those guys, Ted and Paul, like bring different things to the party, and I don't know, if Paul sings like Ted. I mean, the songs were they were already written, as far as like, the ones when Paul sang on Cockroach. So he
Right.
really had more limitations. But I did think that his voice fit that record very well. And we were kind of cautiously optimistic about it. But then we got dropped. so all that optimism went right out the window. But yeah, I still, again, I occasionally go back and listen to a track from that record, and I listen to the difference between Ted and Paul, and I think that Paul, like you said, I agree that he has a little bit more angst, a little bit more aggression in his voice. And so I think he fit the angrier or the more aggressive songs better. Whereas I think maybe Ted might fit the sweeter stuff better, so
Right.
it's a fine line.
That's right. When you're writing this kind of music, it definitely is. And I wanted to bring up a project that you did that I absolutely love, and that is Westworld. I have all the CDs. I've had them since they were released, and it was one of those deals where I already know when I see you and Tony and Mark attached to anything, it's like a slam dunk.
Oh, thanks.
But those three albums, were all very strong but very different. Kind of like in their elements. The original Westworld, self-titled, and then Skin to me had like more of like a modern type vibe. And Cyber Dreams kind of accompanied them both, with songs like Uneasy and Illusions and, Cyber Dreamer. What was it like for you working on that project with those two guys and obviously, Mark and his passing, that was a hard hit to see
Yeah,
him.
yeah, it was very, very tough to I was pretty much around when all of that was happening with Mark, because I worked on a lot of the Riot albums. So yeah, it was not an easy time to be watching, what was going on with Mark, and it was very tough. But getting back to your question about Westworld, I mean, that was kind of presented to me in a different way, meaning like they were already working with another bass player, and I don't know how, I forget who approached me about that. I think it was just Tony. I think Tony called me and asked me if I wanted to get involved with that, and it was a different thing for me because it was not necessarily something I was looking for, but I knew Mark from Riot, and I was a huge Riot fan when I was a young kid, and I knew of Tony's work, of course, and so it was presented to me in that, well, I just had to be a member of the band and a bass player. Like, I didn't have to do anything as far as writing songs or producing or engineering or any of that. So
Right.
I really just concentrate on playing bass and maybe having that weight lifted off my shoulders, and maybe being in a band, and again, just enjoying the whole band process as opposed to being the leader of the band. So it was a welcome thing for me, and I knew that as I got used to the other guys in the band, that I would eventually kind of lean into adding more of my influence as far as how the records were going to sound, or the songs, or this and that. So
Right.
I think I maybe co-wrote one or two things on the last album, but I definitely gave my opinions. I would think that the way that the Tony and Mark wrote those albums was very similar, and yet very different to the way Paul and I, or me, Steve and I write. And that Mark would literally write just pieces of music, and then Tony would just completely just take them and write whatever he wanted to them, and maybe edit them, maybe if he felt the section was too long, or this or that, and whatever. So it wasn't necessarily my style of music in the beginning. It was a little bit foreign to me, because again, I come from the school of hooks.
Right.
So that was more of a kind of an old school. I don't want to say that there were no hooks on those songs. There were, but it was different style, just a different thing. And so a lot of times when I would listen to, the songs as they were being put together, I would listen and go, wow, this could have been better, or this could have been different, or maybe this is great, or whatever. But I would listen to it and then ask myself, do I want to, state my opinion on this, or should I just keep quiet and play the bass? And so I decided to keep quiet and play the bass. I just, I felt like they don't need another voice. Mark and Tony had enough, getting those records together. And so I kind of like the way they came out, because again, they were recorded old school. We were all in the same room. We cut all the basic tracks together, and it was just completely foreign to the way that I work, meaning, I was always in bands and situations where everyone had a voice and everyone had an opinion, and no one took it, personally. Meaning, if I went up to the guitar player and said, hey, that lick isn't great, maybe you should try playing this. There's a lot of guitar players that'll say, like, who the fuck are you? You're not a guitar player, or you're not better than me.
Right.
Concentrate on what you're doing and let me do what I'm doing, right? So that's great and everything, but you don't grow as a musician when you kind of shut yourself off to criticism. So I'm not saying that that's the way Westworld was, but it was, I definitely felt that, meaning like, I didn't want to make any comments to Tony or to Mark or to John I forgot the keyboard player's name. Oh God, now I'm going to get shot. I forgot. Anyway. So sometimes I felt like maybe I should just not open my mouth and just kind of let them steer the ship, and whatever happens, happens. Because again, it wasn't my show.
Right.
So I like the way the 3 records came out. Again, by the time we did Cyber Dreamer, I was more involved with, shaping the songs. And I don't know if that was a good idea or not. Again, I like the dynamic between Mark's kind of metal roots and bluesy influence, like almost a cross between, Riot and Deep Purple, for lack of a better, reference. And then you had Tony coming from, his roots, which were, Judas Priest and, his TNT thing and the stuff that he liked. So I thought it was a really unique kind of marriage. And I like the way all of those records came out. I'm proud of those.
It was a really good, combination, like you said, with, Tony with kind of like that Euro style.
Yeah.
With TNT, and then obviously Mark with the metal, and you with the with the melodic rock. It was.
Yeah, I mean, Mark definitely has that in him. If you kind of take out the metal or the hard rock part of Riot and all of those records, if you listen to just the music and the changes, there's a lot of good, really melodic stuff in there. So
Right.
he definitely had it was more blues based, whereas my sense is more on the pop side. I like more like obvious hooks, whereas Mark's writing is definitely more blues based. But it was definitely some cool stuff in there, and and Tony knows a good melody. He's written some really good stuff with TNT and his solo stuff. So, I thought the pairing of them was really, really good. It was just very unfortunate as far as, Mark's health and what happened with him in the end. Is very sad.
It is. He was one of those guys that was, I'm not going to say underrated, but wasn't appreciated as much as he should have been for how great of an artist he was.
Yeah, he was very, to himself. He didn't really like to be in the spotlight too much. He was kind of an introvert, and so I think that's probably why he wasn't in the same, mentioned in the same breaths as the, guys that he admired, like the Gary Moores and the Michael Shankers, but he played a lot like that. Like he had a vibrato on his guitar and a phrasing that to me was very reminiscent of a Michael Schenker or Gary Moore. And he had that in him. And so the real, guitar players, musicians, they recognize that. They know how good Mark was.
He definitely was great. You've had the opportunity to work with so many, great musicians and great collaborations, and you've stayed extremely relevant, I believe, since the start. And you continue to write, these great songs, great hooks. Do you feel that it gets easier now to compose these songs, or is it harder now because you feel that you need to outdo what you previously have done?
Well, I think it's easier in a sense that I let a lot of things go, meaning because I'm not really focused on writing that quote unquote hit, meaning writing that song that is an undeniable hit. So now a lot of times, it is easier to write now only because I took that away. I took away the pressure. There is no pressure because there is no radio. I mean, there's no radio. So, and, rock music is, I don't want to say it, but it's pretty much a thing of the past, meaning it's not relevant in today's market as far as like, the younger generation. So when you take that away, yes, I can't get away from my roots and what I like to listen to. When I listen to music, I like to get that feeling inside, whether it's my band or someone else's music, where in the first minute I hear something that I go, oh yeah, that's it. That's what I want to hear. It just gives you, I always say that it gives you that special feeling. I don't know what the hell it is, but it does. It just like strikes something inside of me, and I go, that's what I want to hear. And I don't hear that from the majority of the rock bands that are still out there. I just don't. There are a couple that I hear and I go, okay, yeah, they're still, they still, are writing the hooks or are giving me that special feeling. But I just, I think it's easier to write now because there's no pressure, but there is still the pressure that I put on myself to make sure that I don't let too much crap, go and get put on, again, I always talk about records and that they're all your children. They can't all be good looking. They can't all be smart. So you try and make sure that most of them are good looking and smart, but there's always a couple that you kind of like at the end that you go, maybe I should have left those off the record, or maybe I shouldn't, you know what I mean? So
Right.
it's there's definitely less pressure now.
That's cool to hear that you look at it that way, because that's really, the basis of a great song. I mean, every great song has that hook, that memorable thing, and it all ties back to, situations in your life, and that's what, when I talk to, guys like you and what those songs meant to me, growing up back at that time, because that was like high school days, and you think about those good times, and I think about, like I said, Naughty Naughty and Under the Gun, and they made me happy, and they still do.
Oh, thanks, man. That means a lot. Yeah, I mean, again, I had those songs growing up too. They were just from different bands, so I don't want to say that it kind of, seeped its way into my core and, as far as a writer or Steve but that's kind of how it happens when you're young and you're trying to find like-minded people. You kind of band together with people that think the way you do and have the same kind of musical tastes. So, I mean, it's not a coincidence that, I grew up listening to Cheap Trick and Van Halen and Motley and, all these bands that had, kind of, put out a certain feeling when you listen to their music, and that it seeped into what I started doing. So, again, I didn't want to write a song that really got you pissed off or made you cry or anything like that. It was like I wanted more that upbeat, like, yeah, man, let's go have a good time, let's go party, let's go, live our lives and forget about all the problems. So that was always something that wasn't attractive to me growing up, which is that I didn't like all the bands that kind of were, I don't know, talked about world politics or the troubles in the world. Like, I wanted to forget about all of that stuff. Right. I want to, leave that in school or leave that on the news when you watch it. Like, I don't need to be reminded of that when I'm trying to listen to music. To me, music was an escape. So I wanted to at least attempt to do that for whoever listened to my music.
That's really great to hear, because I think a lot of people don't emphasize the positive as much. Like you said, the negative side has always been brought out, and it seems like it's more focused that way nowadays. Like you said, with especially in the way music is now, it's it's more in your face. It's not as much tongue in cheek and not as much fun.
Yeah,
at least in my opinion.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree 100%.
When you look back on your musical career, Bruno, what are some of the things that stand out, and what are some of the things that you're most proud of looking back?
I would just say just beating the odds and, being able to, get signed and have a decent career with Danger. And, then, I mean, look, I know that I'm an acquired taste and that, I'm another kind of person that doesn't really, put myself out there as much as I could, especially in nowadays to, get more traction as far as being an artist, because I kind of, I'm realistic about it. I know that, my window is closing, and, or closed for that matter. So I kind of look at it realistic, and I'm just like, I'm proud that, out of all the people that I came up with and all the bands that were in my kind of era, that we made a little bit of a mark. And look, we made mistakes, and everybody does, and I have just as many sob stories as every other band that got signed or feel that they were wrong. But I also look at it on a positive side, where I know a lot of musicians now that were my peers growing up that never made it, that, felt that they were just as talented and felt like they had their bands were just as good and this and that. And so the fact that we were able to get past that first hurdle and get on a major label and have somewhat of a career band wise that lasted, 3 to 5 years, which is, again, sometimes longer than a lot of bands. And then we're able to continue on a smaller scale. After that, I'm very proud of that. I mean, I have a lot of regrets, just like everybody else, but I don't want to dwell on that. It is what it is, and I just kind of try and look back on it in a positive way, and just say, hey, you know what? I beat the odds. Most musicians don't even get a chance to get up to the plate and take a swing, and I did. So I'm very grateful for that. And, look, do I wish that things would have happened differently and that, maybe it would have had a little bit more success? Yeah. But, what am I going to do about it now? I'm not one of these people that sit around and just, get depressed about things that happened. There's nothing I could do about it. So I just kind of, I worry about today and not much more than that.
That's great to hear. And, you brought up a lot of that, and I was going to ask you, in closing here is, when you look back at your career, what do you want your legacy to be? I mean, what do you want, fans and, people in the music business to look back and say, hey, this guy was good for this? I mean, what do you want your legacy to be in that sense?
Well, I mean, look, I would love for them to, just all of a sudden to recognize me as the greatest musician that ever lived.
Right.
But, we know that that's not going to happen. So, and I know that I'm not, so not even close. So, I mean, I guess if I wanted, people to remember me for something, it's just that, I did my best, and I think I wrote some catchy songs out there, some, and actually a lot of songs that maybe should have been more successful, So
Right.
If somebody stumbles, we get that a lot now. We get people, younger people that never heard of anything that I've done, or Danger, Defiance, whatever, and they hear it for the first time. And yeah, I mean, of course, it sounds, like it came from a different time. But they recognize the song. They recognize the hook. They recognize, that the performance. So if people continue to do that, even if it's on a really small scale, I think I did what I set out to do. So just to, they want to remember me as a guy that gave his all and wrote some pretty catchy songs. That's good enough for me.
I think you've done a fantastic job, and I mean, you really have over your career. And I want to say in closing, I want to thank you for everything that you've done over these years. Like I said, as a fan, it's been things that I've hung on to. It's been, like when I listen to this new Defiants album, it's just, it ties to, memories of growing up and the good times. And I want to thank you for doing that, because you put in years and years of this, and you brought something special, a special thing to art, and it's through the music, and I really appreciate it as coming from a fan.
I don't know how to thank you enough. I really appreciate it. It means a lot that you say that, because there's not many people that are saying it these days. So I genuinely appreciate you and all the nice things you said. And again, we're not here forever, so it's like if I'm going to try and make music now, I want it to be something that's memorable and something that people like yourself would appreciate. And so for that, I'm eternally grateful and appreciate you.
Like I said, I appreciate everything that you do. And Defiance Drive, June 9th on Frontiers Records.
Yeah,
and everybody that listen, it's a great album, man, start to finish. That's the best way I could put it.
We got I don't know, when is this thing coming out? This when are you going to post this interview?
I'll do a little bit of editing, put a the logos and everything inside, and it'll be posted within a few days. I'll make sure to share it with you.
Yeah, no, because we got the video for Go Big or Go Home coming out Monday.
Oh,
So,
nice.
so there's another thing. And yeah, anybody that's listening to this, go check us out. Support your local rock band, because they're not growing on trees anymore, and there's not many of them left. So go check us out on Spotify, on all your streaming platforms, and appreciate the listen.
Yeah, it is. It's a great album, and I'll tell you what, I would love to see you guys live at any point. I know that's always tricky.
Yeah, it's a tough
nowadays.
It's tough just because of it logistically. It's really tough, and I said this in other interviews. One of my main gripes with the music business is that most of the bands out there don't really put that much importance on how they're treated, or how they're treated monetarily as well. And again, it's not about money, but it is too, because this is what we do for a living. So the fact that rock musicians are disrespected so much, especially rock musicians that are on the level that I'm on and below me, So oh, sorry, that's Rob Marcello. Yeah, it's just it really makes me sad that musicians will just keep getting the shaft and playing for no money, and playing for no reward, just for the joy of playing. And I had that when I was young, and I still do enjoy playing, but I look at it this way: the price of a gallon of milk keeps going up. Why doesn't the price of a band go up at all?
Right.
It never does.
Well put.
So
right.
when we get the rate of inflation like everything else, then I think more bands will go out there and play. But until then, we'll wait, and hopefully maybe we'll get a decent offer to go play shows, and we would do that. So it's all a matter of how a promoter wants to package it and wants to present it, and so we're definitely up for it.
I always hear this. This is constant. Every time I see when you guys put something out, when I see the Defiants, I see a fan put on there, "This is the best band on the Frontiers label," nonstop.
Yeah, that is a huge compliment.
Right.
There are a lot of good bands on the Frontiers label now. So
right.
I know there's only two people that say that, but I love those two people.
Hey, you got a third one here, man.
All right, man. Three's good. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Crowd.
Yeah.
All right, Bruno, I appreciate having you on, man. Talking to Fastlane. Like I said, I'm honored to speak with you. I'm honored to have you on. I'd love to have you on again at any time, and I wish you the best of luck with this album, the Defiants, and everything that you do, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Appreciate your time. And yeah, if you want to chat again, just hit me up. You have my email address, or if you don't, I could send it to you real quick. So yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate you actually very knowledgeable and ask the right questions. I can't tell you how many times I do these things and people don't even know who I am. So I appreciate that you're for real, and come on your show anytime, bud. Thanks.